Welcome to the Grown Woman Podcast.
With your host, Marianne and,
of course, Shakia.
Get ready for candid conversations, expert insights, and plenty of laughter along the way.
Of course.
Tune in and join our community of empowered women navigating life's journey with style and grace.
With style and grace. Love it. Tune into today's episode.
Welcome to the Grown Woman Podcast.
Grown Woman Podcast. Hey, y'all. We are in Chicago, the windy city, because it's been windy. But we came down 2 days ago to celebrate a couple of birthdays. You don't see the other birthday girl, but she's in the room.
Here.
She's just not on the camera. But yeah, so happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
It was a time, y'all. I'm tired too, and it wasn't even my birthday.
We've been kicking it since Saturday?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so tired.
So you're now
33.
What was your discovery coming into 33?
I think this is gonna be the year of elevation for me. That's what I feel deep down in my heart. God's still working on me.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to my big sister and my big brother. They're giving me advice and I'm following it. So
I'm gonna give you updates on what that looks like. Give you true updates of what that looks like. And what has been your favorite thing since we've been celebrating? When I say y'all, I'm tired.
Oh my God. I don't know. I feel like everything that we've done is just been so much fun. Like yesterday we went out to eat in the afternoon. The thing is that these people have energy.
These people, when she's the main one, we've been going from morning
Dr.
to night.
Jensen and MJ don't want to stop.
Yeah,
I'm like, I can't keep. We've been going. We were supposed to go to the escape room last night, and I don't know where we ended up
at the Clayton, which was a dope spot. We met amazing people.
We did.
Was on our best behavior.
We had a good time.
Yes, such a good time. Inside, if y'all could see that, it's an inside.
It was fun. We had a lot of fun.
But yeah, so I guess that was our check-in.
Yeah, how you doing?
Celebrating you. I just told y'all I'm tired, boss. No, I'm actually. You're here for a conference, so we came early to celebrate you and our other friend. But I'm actually flying out in a couple of hours to go see my daughter, my oldest. So I'm excited about that. Got to get in mom mode, go check on the big girl, my grown up. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
That's nice. And the weather is beautiful here too.
It is. It's actually, I can't complain. If you could see the view is beautiful. It's super amazing. We're on the 43rd floor. So we actually get to see the full city from downtown. But yeah, I've enjoyed celebrating and reliving my birthday through you guys again. Shout out to our homies who have taken care of us this last 3-4 days.
They've been nothing but
made sure that we were catered to.
Yes.
Ate well. We're gonna owe them big time. I know when they see this, it's gonna be like, run us our dollars. But no, thank y'all. But no,
we love you.
Excited about today's episode. We have a super duper dope guest, actually a friend and mentor of yours. So give us a little breakdown of who she is, because she's coming up next.
Yes. So we have today Tere Sackerson. She is the Managing Director of Treasury and Payment Solution at BMO. I've known her for the last 2 years, heavily involved in the community, woman of influence in 2020. She's been in the industry for over 20 years, male-dominated industry. A woman in tech, because that's what we sell. We sell technology, so financial technology. So I'm very excited to have her. Very excited for you guys to hear her story, where she comes from, how she grew up.
Yeah. And
we can't wait for the gems that she's going to drop today.
Yeah, no, dope woman. I give accolades and respect to all women who are killing the game, especially a male-dominated game, and can still be a nice person, because there is this mean girl syndrome, but when you can be a boss and you could be successful, be professional, and dominate, and still be authentic.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for the conversation. check it out. Here she comes in 3, 2.
So we're here, finally. I've been waiting for this day.
Yeah.
We are so excited to have you here, and we're so excited to have this conversation.
Yeah.
This is a Grown Woman Conversation.
Grown Woman Podcast, y'all.
Grown Woman Podcast.
Yeah.
So welcome, Tere. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great.
Yeah.
Are you
Podcast.
excited?
Podcast.
I am. This is the first time.
Really?
I
On
go
any
to
podcast?
first on any
Oh,
podcast.
wow.
Sure.
We're the first. We're breaking her
So
chair,
thank
y'all.
you.
Yes.
We're honored to have you. We ask big questions, and it's gonna go from professional to personal. So, like I said earlier, we just want you to be you. And I'm so excited for people to hear your story because we've had a lot of personal conversations, and we just collect from the moment that we met. One of the things that you and I connected with the first time that we talked was our identity. You know, growing up with what people wanted us to be, how people saw us, how the colors that you wear sometimes when you walk into a room, especially in the corporate world that we work. And we've cried together because of how you felt when it comes to your identity. So I want to start by talking a little bit more about that, the struggles that you had with your identity and how you dealt with that. Because again, like I said earlier, we connected so much and you gave me such great advice. And we refer to each other as the pink sheets instead of the black sheets, right? So, and that's one of the paintings that you have in your office, which I really, really love. So I want to start with that.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, and I think it's a great piece to talk about. And I think that the most powerful piece for me is to hopefully resonate and to register with younger Marians, with younger Terrys, to give them more confidence as they continue to move forward. And so when we look at that struggle, for me, it was growing up in government housing, and it was intimidation. It was the pressure that I needed to conform. And so coming into the industry when I was younger, it was really challenging not to conform or to not feel that I brought the same presence as my counterparts. Because we would have a conversation, and as we were having that conversation, my peers would share that their dads were CFOs, they were accountants, they were attorneys, and here's Tere Sackerson growing up in government housing. And again, there's a piece of feeling that I should be ashamed of my background, but when I look forward 25 plus years in my career, what I've found is the differences in how I was raised is the positive impact that I'm making on this industry for the fact that I'm not conforming, that I'm continuing to be unapologetically me, and with that becomes powerful results based off of the companies that I've worked for.
So I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 podcasts ago, maybe longer. We had a conversation around shame, what it looked like, and you call it government housing, I call it the projects. So I grew up very in a similar situation where, for me, I didn't know like it was a bad thing, right? So I grew up thinking because of my surroundings that this was the norm, and I didn't discover it wasn't until my college years because I was surrounded by other individuals. And so never knowing that there was a disadvantage until I was exposed to more, right? And then hearing you say you felt shame because you had the opportunity to be around other students or other individuals that had fathers or mothers that were already in that space. When you say dealing with the shame, how did that, like where did you even notice or know that you should be shamed or shameful, right? And then how did that create a perseverance, right? Because again, for me, mine was very later on when I recognized like, oh, this is not normal. This is not how people live. This is, right? But I also had to be like, well, this is how I was raised, and I was a teen mom. So like on top of the statistic, then I became another statistic. I didn't start dealing with shame till very late. So like kind of hearing your shame, like when did you even recognize like, oh,
So, you
I
know,
have that. Yeah.
So I think at the beginning,
Yeah.
and I think you're hitting an important topic, is however you're raised,
Yeah.
that's normal.
Yeah.
So if you're raised in a white collar family, that's what's normal. If you are raised in a community that has struggles and has oppression, you don't see those, you see that it's normal.
Yeah.
And so when I think of shame versus intimidation, so I'll go to the childhood. I don't think that I felt shame. I think I felt intimidation. If you had a college degree, I would be intimidated to have that conversation because I would see you as an individual that was higher up and that I was lower, and I don't know if that shame was there. The shame probably came more in becoming a professional because my background was so unique and just not knowing how it was going to be perceived, that I didn't come from the same background as what my peers did.
Yeah. And how did you navigate through that space? So again, like I knew I was different, but I didn't know how to identify. Like that it was shame, it was intimidation. For me, my motivation, like the frustration was my motivation. And then I had to learn like, okay, now you have to be able to be motivated by something other than the anger, the frustration that you're different from everybody else. So how did you navigate out of the space of like shame, intimidation, and then like, okay, I'm gonna use this as my motivation to keep going?
Right. So, you know, when you say that, I go to survival. So again, I feel being raised, and I came from a loving family, and I don't want to dismiss that. But there's a key component of just survival, right?
Yeah.
When you start from nothing, you're constantly taking leaps, and you're taking leaps of faith that your wings are going to grow and that you're not going to crash. And a lot of our peers, again, when I go back to my peers, there's so many leaps that they're unwilling to take of the fear of loss or the fear of crashing down. And I didn't have that. So again, coming into my career, I feel that a key component for me was always being willing to take that lead. And not that it was a frustration, but it was, I deserve a spot at the table. Like, I know that I put in the effort, I put in the grind, and tended to deviate more to continuing to take that leap. And again, reflectively, as I have conversations with other individuals, when I look at it, and again, it's how do we differentiate, because they're afraid to take those leaps, I feel as if they're checking boxes, right? Because they're so closed back, where you and I, we have this beautiful, authentic superpower, right? That says, let's take this leap. And then, again, that's what's starting to differentiate us in a very positive way for the communities and the companies we work for.
No, I love that. Because if you know what the bottom looks like, you're like, well, I can't go no lower, so let's jump, right?
And you want to know what else it tells you? I know that I can rise back up.
I love that.
And again, I think that's really powerful to say. Like, even when you make those changes, you're willing to take that leap because you've done it and had so much success. And when I look at the bottom, I know I've been there and I know how I can rise. And it's a game changer.
I love that. I love that. Sorry,
I knew that
was
going. So, in the same line of what we're talking about, and you as a woman in Treasury, walking into spaces where it's male dominated, you're already coming in with this shame, with your identity, and your counterpart are male, and you're a woman. And a lot of times when men think of women, emotional, they're emotional. And we've talked about this too. So how have you been able to use your superpower to go into this room? Because I've seen you staying on top of things and saying, this is not right. How do you come from growing up with shame, feeling this way about your identity, to going into this room and saying, you know what, we're going to make a change here because of this? So where did that come from? Where did that drive, the confidence for you to be able to do that?
You know, I think that it could possibly be just a natural, innate part of who I am. But coming from where I came from, I'm always about the underdog. And I always want to see the underdog succeed. And so when I look at that space, I think that for me, it just comes naturally to want to fight for the view of diversity. I want to fight for the change of how we are viewed, even from a corporation. When you bring in emotions, again, when I go younger to my career, the number of times that I was told, and still to this day, Terry, there's a fine line between passion and emotion. And again, men and women, again, we're all a spectrum, but we're very different. And to define that my emotion, that my passion is bad, but it's coming from a loving and a caring place, and it's coming from wanting the greater good for a company, where sometimes, again, with my male counterparts, and I'm not putting them all in that bucket, for them, it's about achieving, them having more money in their bank account. It's checking that box. And when they show their emotions, it's an aggression, it's an intimidation. And so I'll own my emotion and my passion, knowing that it's to get to a greater place. And again, we should have confidence with that. And again, we should be equally questioning our male counterparts and saying, like, how do you view your emotion? Is it aggression? Is it tearing someone down to get to a higher position? And if that's what you expect me to be, then I'm not the best candidate, or this is potentially not the role for me.
And so in hearing that, right, for me, recently left the corporate space. Well, prior to that, I was tech, like, so still a male-dominated space. And I did let it change me, because I was like, I'm going to be at the table with males, and I never want them to see my emotions, right? Because I don't want them to think that I'm weak. So I would go into rooms and be like, we're not, right? This is the conversation I have myself. We're not showing emotions, right? I will not allow my emotions to dictate my success. And so I would go in and I would be hella aggressive. I'm like, okay, we're sitting at the table. And so most of my career, that's how it was. I felt like I need to be at the table with the dogs. I'm going to make sure I felt that way. And towards the end, it wore me out. It wore me down to not be able to show up fully when I had a problem, when I felt a certain way, because I didn't want them to see me as weak. But I'm like, I'm tired of having to come and be so strong because you may look at me differently. And to hear you say, well, no, my emotion is passion. Like, I wish I would have had a woman mentor in the space to be like, oh, that's okay. Like, yes, you can have emotions, because again, I was like, no, because if they see me weak, they're going to chew me up and spit me out. And so I would go home so worn out every day, because I'm like, damn, now I can breathe, and now I could feel, now I could do all of those things. And so to navigate in that space and to turn it and say, this is my passion, like that's a gem. I feel like most women who don't know that, like, we hold it in, and we have to be, especially as a woman and a woman of color, right? I'm always told, like, you have to be strong. You have to be, like, you have to work harder. You have to do all those things. And I sometimes, like, a 14-year-old and a 22-year-old, like, have to catch myself with telling my daughters, like, you have to work as hard and harder, and you have to do this, and you can't show. And I'm like, well, damn, why am I teaching them something that I struggle with? Right? Like, and so to hear that, it's like, no, it's okay. Yeah.
And I think that we have to continue to change that narrative. We really do. And I think, like, to give yourself a little bit of grace, regardless of whatever side you're on, it's exhausting. It's exhausting being different than your counterparts. And to give yourself grace and the fact that it is okay to have down days. It's okay to recharge your batteries. When we look at women, again, they normally say that we are nurturers, we grow. And that is, again, where we thrive, is the fact that we're not hunters and gatherers. We nurture and we grow. And we're such a big piece to the corporation. And even on my side, I have those days where I'm just exhausted. And to give an example without details, it would be when I look at my role, so many times I've been the only female, and all of my male peers are male. And sitting in a room, and I see the world differently and through a different optic, yet they all see it the same way. So when I share something that's different, it's immediately shut down. And again, it's having that confidence to say, let's take a pause. All 5 of you are very similar, and I'm different. I listened to every word that you shared, and I processed it. And at this point, I'm just asking for the same in return. I'm sharing, instead of shutting it down, let's take 5 minutes to process how I think differently, how it could be an opportunity to grow our company, to strengthen our team, and then let's have a conversation. And again, I think that is sometimes wearing on me, but it's also really powerful that when you feel your voice is not heard, to again have that confidence and have the courage to say, you know, I just sat there and listened to you come to a consensus when you are like in thought. Now I'm asking you to not dismiss what I had to say. Let's take 5 minutes, really let it register, and then also let it register to benefits and drawbacks, and let's pick up the conversation.
I love that. Self-advocating.
Yes.
That's what it sounds like. I mean, self-advocating, right?
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. So moving a little bit more from, you know, the professional side, I want to get into the personal side. Because we're moms, right? You have two daughters, I have one, and you have a son. So how do we teach our daughters this? Because I grew up seeing my mom hustling, like 100%. Telling me, you need to work hard, you can't depend on nobody, you need to make your own money. How do we change the narrative at home where a girl can be like, you know what, I can be a boss, I can do this, I can, you know, get my point across. I can also be soft. I can also be feminine. How do we teach?
Because I'm still learning that space.
Yes.
I'm learning how to be okay with like showing my woman side in a space that I am creating a contract, or like I still walk in and I'm like, all right, kid, like we don't have to have this chip, but I have a chip. Because I'm like, I need to make sure you know who I am when I'm walking in this room. And as Mary said, like it's a challenge because my oldest is just like me. She's so tough sometimes where I'm like, little girl. But then my 14-year-old, she's so soft. She carries purses. She's delicate. And like, I have to have patience to be like, she's not she's not going to move like you. She won't speak up for herself. Like all of these things. And so navigating the spaces, like how do you do that as a mom?
You know, I think that we're all going down this journey the same way, right? Like we're doing the best we can with what we have, and I think that I'm in the same spot that you are. How do I navigate it with my two daughters? I've got my oldest; she's a very strong personality, and then I've got my youngest daughter, and she's so soft spoken, and and both of them have a kindness, but they're two very different people. And so with it, I would say that we should continue to give ourselves grace, that we're all trying to navigate these changing waters. But I think that the other piece to give grace is that we all come into a maturity of who we are, and it's at different times. And every day that I wake up, and I hope that this is the way it is, and hopefully I have a long life, that there's something for me to learn, that there's some improvement, self-improvement, that I can do. So again, like with that, I think it's just grace, but it's also grace that even when you have children who are different, is you continue to instill foundational pieces of nugget that they will take, but giving us the grace that someone may mature with that nugget of information at the age of 18. Another one may not get there until 32, and that's okay. Like live your life, live the path that you're meant to be on, and not judge yourself to where other people are.
Yeah, love that. That just made me think about where you are now. What would you tell the little Terry, the 15-year-old, 16-year-old high school Terry, like what you know now, and you're navigating just these spaces? What would you tell your teenage self from what you know right now?
So my teenage self, I didn't have a lot of confidence. And so the first key piece is, Terry, have confidence in who you are and continue to be, again, authentically and unapologetically you. And, every song that I listen to, like every person who's had a tremendous amount of success, which I wouldn't even say that I've had that, what you're going to learn is most people aren't advocating for you. They're not. Like, I think for women, we think that that's the case, that we need to have this whole support. But listen to artists talk about saying, I want to become a superstar. The number of people who told them, that's silly. You can't do that. and then they rise to the occasion. And so I just believe in following your passions and not allowing other people to dictate what you can and cannot achieve.
Like we're back to that self-advocating and the confidence. I'm trying to think. I don't know. Like I was a different teen, more rebellious than anything. But just like mine came from a lot of anger and having my dad and those type of things. But I don't know. I think maybe confidence or maybe grace would probably been something I would look back and be like, I should have told myself, like, just be okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to change. It's
And
going to
it
get
also
better.
depends on what area. Like there's areas of my life where I'm very confident.
Yeah.
In other
Yeah.
specific areas, I'm like, I have no confidence
Yeah.
for that specific area.
Yeah.
I know I can be successful here, but in this area, and I don't like to use the negative self-talk because I'm trying to change things, right? But sometimes it's tough.
Yeah.
You're like,
In the business world, I'm telling you, I'm 10 toes down. I'm coming in guns blazing.
yes.
In my personal life, I'm like, I need a therapist. I need this, and like I need a whole team to walk me through, like trust in my decisions.
Yeah.
Because like you said, we're confident in so many areas. But put me in a room at a table, and I feel like I'm gonna go toe to toe with the best. So yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
Because in my personal life, I'm like, looking at my past decisions, I may need a little assistance with this part right here. So yeah, not like that.
Same.
Yeah.
How do you manage doing everything that you do? You know, you're very involved in the community. You have this passion for running. You have your 3 kids, work, things that you deal with every day. Because one of the things that you and I also talked about is sometimes we feel guilty when we're not there for our kids. Like if I miss something in school or a trip, and it's like, am I a bad mom for wanting to do more with my life? So how do you deal with that whenever that feeling comes in, or if a family member says something that is triggering to you and things like that when it comes to your mom style?
Yeah.
Right. You know, so I'm going to go to one of my good friends, and especially when my children are younger, and we've had conversations that my youngest has special needs. In addition to that, a good friend of mine, Ronnie Thompson, who I think that you've met, he would always just laugh at me because there was a time period, and again, this is like self-deprivation, right?
Yeah.
Like you're putting yourself down, and I would share with him, I'd be like, Ronnie, I'm a hot mess. So like there was this time period where, again, like I wouldn't say that to another person, but I was saying it to myself. I'm a hot mess. And Ronnie was like, Terry, you need to take a pause. Like, he's like, you are a boss. He's like, you are crushing it in a corporate world that is male dominated. You have a child with special needs. You have a child who has medical needs with you know, severe allergies. You do so much, and you're not giving yourself the credit. And so again, like I think we do sometimes to have to just have that seed, regardless of what it is that we're accomplishing. And instead of focusing on all of the things that we perceive that we're failing at, just taking that moment to say, you know, I'm going to sit here, and even if 15 things are going wrong, there are 50 things that are going right, and I am just tunnel vision to what I'm not accomplishing. And going to children in that time period, again, we're all very different, and how we raise our families is going to be different, and that's diversity, and it's beautiful. But I've never had an issue with not spending enough time with my children. When I think about it, and again, everyone's going to deal with it differently, but I didn't have guilt. And I don't have guilt even today, sitting here in Chicago with my family in Milwaukee. And the reason being is they get a lot of mom time. They get a lot of my time from the day that they were born. And I want them to be well-rounded individuals. And so if I'm always there, they're only going to see the optic, the view of the world from my perspective and my eyes. And I think I limit them.
I love that.
Where when I step away, it gives them an opportunity to be with their father. Having au pairs, it gave them opportunities to build relationships, to see different cultures, different ideologies, different beliefs, and having people from, you know, South Africa, from Europe, from, you know, South America, to hopefully make them a more well-rounded, empathetic person. And so again, like if you do start to have guilt, maybe looking the opposite way to say, I feel this guilt, but what are some benefits for the reason, you know, that I'm feeling it, that will actually be a benefit moving forward?
That made me think of, and I really wish I could remember her name. I think it's like a Tashonda, but she's an investor, and the question was asked, right? Because she's like one of the power top 100 people in like investing, financial advising, and the question was like, how does she balance it all? Like, you're running this amazing company, you're doing all of these things, and she said, I look at it as my investment portfolio, right? Like, you look at, you got 100%. Sometimes you got to put 33% here, 22% here, and in this season it may be 70, right? She's like, do my kids get 100% of me? No. But if it's in this season because I have to grow this and they're only doing 33, like, I'm going to make sure it's the best 33% and make sure that they have the support. And so when I looked at it, like, it's going to be that ebb and flow, right? And as you have to break your life into understanding at this time, like, what does it look like and where's my time going? And if it's worth the building of what I'm trying to accomplish. Like, if it's only 33%, like, be honest with that, but make sure it is the best 33%. Like, I'm not with my daughter and I'm on my phone, right? Like, if I know it's a busy month, the time I'm spending with my daughters, I need to be like, okay, no screens, no emails. Like, this is the time that I get. And like, hearing her say that, okay, like, you just have to look at the percentages and then give the best that you can. And then next season, and then you can give them 90 and then work as 10. And I was like, right? And that stuck with me for a very long time because, again, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a single mom. Well, I have support, but my daughters live with me by myself. And so being able to do all those things and travel, I used to be like, oh my gosh, she has to stay with her grandma and she this and this. And it's like, well, what is your tribe there for? Right? Like, if you're not going to allow them to help you, then what is there for? So just kind of hearing that brought that back up. Like, so now when I'm like, all right, I look at the month, I'm like, it's probably gonna be like a very tight month. So I got to make sure the little times that I do get to do this, that they have to be amazing. You know, so I love that. Yeah.
Tere, what makes you cry? Like, when you think
Everything.
What makes you cry?
Everything.
What makes you cry?
What makes you cry? Like, when we see this powerful woman sitting here.
That was such a question.
I don't know. I just thought of it and I'm like, what makes Tere, like, when you think of like something that is like, damn, that just hits me in my heart. Like, when you think of life in general, it can be, you know, in the workplace, it can be in your personal life. What is something that you're like, that brings me to a point where it's just sad.
So talking about my dad, like, I actually kept it together, which I was very proud of myself on. But I cry at everything. But when you said what makes me sad, again, I think it's the background that I come from, and again, it's this immense judgment. Like, and I feel the pendulum is swinging back the opposite direction, thankfully. But I feel there's so much judgment, and I don't know if this is a social media that's amplifying this.
Because we have a platform for everything, a spotlight on everything.
Right,
yes.
right. And that we feel that we need to judge each other. And, you know, I always tell people, go ahead and judge me. And again, like, this is like, it lets it go, right? Because you're like, oh my gosh, I have 10 different people judging me for how I'm living my life. And so, tongue in cheek, I tell people, judge me. I judge myself. But to go to the sadness, and again, just going back to how I was raised, the community that I was in, the high school that I graduated from, is I'll hear remarks from people who don't understand those struggles. And there's this judgment on a segment of our population. We have it within our Milwaukee community where it's not understanding that norm, right? Like, if you grow up in a different community, that's normal.
Right.
And so sometimes I get frustrated when I hear a judgment, and maybe having a child with special needs is the same way, right? Like you should know not to be a drug dealer when you're 21, but when you're born in a house,
and this is what you know,
and this is what
these
you
are
know,
what's presented to you as opportunities.
It's you know, you're 6, you're 8, you're 10, you're 18, you're 20. This is your community. This is your environment. Do you think that there's this epiphany that it's not
That's why
there?
exposure is so important. Yeah.
And that makes me really sad Because instead of having that judgment, think of how different this world would be if we just had the conversation. I see you're in a dark spot. How can I help you? How can I help? And I'll be honest, like I might even cry now. It breaks my heart how much we judge one another versus, again, seeing a person in a time of darkness and saying, how do I help you?
I remember we had this conversation, again, like being a teen mom, like not meeting my dad until I was an adult, all of those things. And then having a child and then getting divorced and all of those things, I would go into different places and you would see the moms and the dads. And I used to have like this, like, I hate being the mom. I hate, like, when they would see me, like, it would be comments of like, is it just you? Right? Like taking my daughter's about, like, because I wanted her to be exposed. So I would put her in dance classes. I would make sure she was in the suburban schools. I would try to do all the right things. But then you would have these questions of, your name is Shakia. Like, where are you from? Like, all of that. And in my mind, it always went to this negativity spot of, like, they think I'm less than. And I tell people all the time, the reason I got my doctorate degree is because I never wanted somebody to tell me no. Not that I even cared about the education, but it was the fact that I never wanted somebody to be able to say you weren't good enough, right? And so my whole life has always been like, how do I get to the next level to improve? And I was talking to one of my mentors, my spiritual father, and he said, well, if you tell people your story, they can't tell it for you, right? And that was how I got over my shame of, well, I'm gonna tell you. I came from a single household. I was raised in the projects. No, I didn't know my dad. Yes, I was a teen mom. Like, I put my story out there so nobody else can come and tell me, because I used to hide it. I never wanted people to know any of those things. And now I'm like, oh, look it up. It's on everything that I do, right? So now it's like, if you're going to judge me, I already gave you the playbook. What you going to do about it, right? And so that is how I live through it, of like, well, I already put it out there, so.
You know, I think another key piece with that, though, is like, as we're talking about that, is, you know, I go back to that social media piece of it. And I was on Facebook and I got off of Facebook. And it was for my mental health, because regardless of what you put out there, it was like, again, like you have these judgments, right? And letting that go is, for me, has been so therapeutic. And people judging, because they're going to judge you one way or another, right? Like, they're either going to judge you because you were from the projects, and then they're going to judge you that you're talking about the projects, and
or
trying
you think
to
you're too good, or you're not good enough, and it's like, what the hell? What do you want me to do?
And again, I think like that goes back to a huge movement that I love in today's society is, again, going back to that self-love and just loving yourself for who you are. And we all have these beautiful stories, and each beautiful story is creating, hopefully, a better America, a better world.
So to end it and to wrap it up, what would you say is so we always say, give us a grown woman gem, right? Like, what would you tell?
Define gem.
Gem, good or bad gem, I know. J-E-M, right? And we're going to say like a tip, not a J-I-M, okay? What would you tell another woman or someone coming behind you? And it could be anything. Whether it's professional, whether it is personal, like, what would you tell listeners and women
Some advice.
Just advice. So we just say our grown woman gems.
Yeah. So gems.
Gems.
Yes.
G-E-M-S.
Yes. And again, partially deaf, so that plays into that.
No, I thought you were like, well, define. Is it J-I-M? We can give them too. No, we're not. Okay.
You know, I think some gems that I would give is, again, is giving yourself grace. They say that you're typically your hardest critic, and I truly believe that. I feel that you're going to find success, and again, and I know that these are, like, I feel as if I'm being repetitive, but are being unapologetically and genuinely who you are. And to end, I go back to some of the anger that you talked about. And if I looked at my younger self, I'm certain there was anger there. But anger is a really exhausting. It is so exhausting to be upset, to be angry. And when you find yourself in those moments, like taking that pause, saying like, I'm heated. And stepping away and saying, like, I'm looking at the issues, where are my blessings? And every morning when you wake up, think of 5 blessings that you have in your
Oh,
life.
I
And
love
that's-
it, which is great.
Yeah.
But that's how you're going to start your day,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, but now you're already starting your day
Yeah.
with the fact that you are being optimistic
Yeah.
and counting blessings
Uh-huh.
instead of the struggles that you feel that or the adversity that you're going to experience that day.
I love that. That's all that I have.
Yeah. I mean, thank you
Yes.
again for accepting our invitation.
In the windy city
in the
of
Windy
Chicago.
City.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for this episode to drop.
Yeah.
And this
Thank
is
you.
the Girl
No,
Woman
thank you.
Podcast.
Thank you
for
for
this
everything.
opportunity.
Thank you for just the honesty, the transparency, and the time.
No, thank you
Yeah.
guys.
So next time, ladies, y'all know what it is, the Grown Woman Podcast.